Good evening. I'm Greg Hodgen, President and CEO of Groendyke Transport. Welcome to episode 2 of Let's Talk. Hopefully this is going to be a format that allows you to find out what I'm thinking, what senior management is thinking, and for you to give us the same benefit to know what you're thinking or what you have questions about. So our plan is to do this every month for about half an hour, and hopefully this is a benefit to you. I certainly think it will be to me. Before we get started on some of the things I'm going to talk about this evening while we wait for questions to come in, I want to describe this a little bit from my end. I'm sitting here in an office in our training center with a camera about 2 feet in front of me, lights around me, and then some of our staff here with me monitoring the chats for questions and running the equipment. And it feels a little bit like Wayne's World. I feel like we're on a public access channel, and I can't see you. I can just see the camera, but it may look like it's a really high-end production, but I'll assure you it's pretty basic. So I'm going to start with a question that came up last time, and I got some really good feedback from Bobby, one of our drivers, and I sent him back a response with more detail, and I think it would be beneficial to share that with you. I don't know that every time we do this that we'll have back and forth on some of these questions, but I think it'll be maybe interesting to those of you that have the same question or heard it last time. First thing I want to say is I think my answer was misinterpreted a little bit when I smiled, and it was a question about speed limiter on our tractors and would we be raising that, and I said absolutely not. Well, let me give you a little background on why I said that. I don't think it's fair to give you a glimmer of hope if I don't think it's going to change anytime in the near future, and there are some reasons for that. I'm going to go into that. Doesn't mean that all these subjects are always closed. It's just that right now it's either my judgment or I've been given a lot of input from a variety of sources that it's just not a good idea. So let's talk about, will we raise the speed limit on our tractors from 65 to 68 or 70? And the question was really posed, Bobby said, don't you think we are good enough to do that? Don't we have the best drivers in the industry? And I would say yes. Unfortunately, the quality of our drivers really doesn't mean much to insurance companies, and the ones it really doesn't matter to are plaintiffs' attorneys. And I'm going to go into some details about that in a minute. I would also tell you there's a bill in the U.S. House right now to limit the speed of commercial trucks to 65 miles per hour. There is, I think, an addition to that that could be up to 70 if a truck has electronic braking assistance. We call that collision mitigation in our trucks. And we've seen it's been very beneficial. Why is this such a hot topic, and why is it something I just don't think we can do right now? Well, let me give you a couple of reasons. Insurance costs for fleets are really skyrocketing, and a lot of exaggeration when people say skyrocketing or legendary is not true. In this case, it is. In the last 3 years, it's gone up about 100%. And even at that cost, coverage levels are being reduced. So if I had told you used to trucking companies might have $50 million worth of insurance, today they get 25. A lot of cases are going over $100 million, and I'm going to tell you specifics in a minute. But let's talk about why is that reduction in coverage meaningful. Well, let's say you bought a new Ford F-150 and you paid $50,000 for it. You want insurance coverage for $50,000 when you insure it. That insurance used to cost you maybe $800 a year. And now the insurance company wants $1,600 a year, but they'll only cover the cost of the pickup up to $30,000. So you're taking a risk that if you have a total loss, you're going to eat $20,000 of loss. Same thing applies to trucking companies. We can't buy enough insurance to cover what we think our company should be worth because we can't afford it, and in fact, they won't even sell it to us. So that's one of the problems. Why is that the problem? Well, for one, people fear trucks. A lot of people have been scared by trucks. Insurance companies charge premium based on the fear that they're going to have a nuclear verdict. We'll talk about nuclear verdicts in a minute. For those reasons, raising the speed in this environment just isn't smart. It may be something we can look at in the future, but I think we have to see a lot of changes. And let's talk about what would happen in the event that we were in a court case, and most trucking companies settle cases. They don't want to go to court and take a chance of losing a case in court. But if you're a plaintiff's lawyer, here would be the argument that you might try to make. So I'm now playing the part of the plaintiff's attorney. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Groendyke Transport, which for years governed its speed at 65 miles per hour, raised the speed of its trucks just because it mattered more to drivers than to the safety of the motoring public. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, why do you think insurance companies charge a higher premium if people speed? Why are drivers' CSA scores affected by speeding? I can tell you why. The speed of an 80,000-pound commercial truck causes more damage and inflicts more bodily injury and death, and Groendyke cared more about revenue and driver retention than safety. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge you to punish this reckless trucking company and fine for the plaintiff. That may sound very dramatic, but this has been going on for the last 2 to 3 years. I actually asked Troy Robertson, our GC, our general counsel, to give me a little bit of a review of what's been going on in cases like this. So while most of these are confidential settlements, we hear about them, they get out in the news, some of them actually go to court. So this is a low number for what may actually have occurred out there. From 2010 to 2019, keep in mind courts were closed in 2020 because of COVID, so nothing's really happened since 2019. There were 51 verdicts of $10 million or more. 23 of those were over $40 million. Of those 51 verdicts over $10 million, 33 were in California, Texas, Georgia, and New Mexico. 3 states we operate in pretty extensively. So while it might seem reasonable, and I'm going to read you this follow-up question to ask why we aren't going to raise our speed limit, there are a couple of pretty good reasons. One of them is the legal environment today is not good for making changes like that. And for decades, trucking has been like a slot machine paying off to plaintiffs' attorneys because they know if they threaten a lawsuit, the trucking company's going to say, okay, what's it going to cost to defend this case versus settling it? And they would settle even when they weren't in the wrong. One of the reasons we put cameras in our trucks, including the inward-facing camera, which I didn't particularly want to do, is it protects our drivers. We have been able to, and I can show you this, we have had cases where people ran into us, then called later, or their insurance company called and said, hey, you ran into us, your driver's reckless, and we're going to sue you if you don't pay up. And we would say, we have footage, show them the footage, show them our driver was doing what they were supposed to do inside the cab, and we never hear from them again. We're able to do that where we've never been able to do that in the past. That is a huge benefit to the drivers, protecting your livelihood and our company from ridiculous lawsuits. So here's the question Bobby sent back to me after I sent my reply to him. Since June 2020, Groendyke has implemented the Smart Drive system in its fleet. With the majority of drivers' safety scores improving tremendously over the past few months, does that, and has it affected Groendyke's insurance premium in a positive manner? I'm going to answer that question first, then I'll read the second part. I think it will affect our insurance premium in a positive manner, and I'll find out. I am the chief negotiator for insurance. Whenever I talk to our underwriters, that's the people who write the insurance policies, I'm going to pose that very question to them and show them what our record has been and how using Smart Drive has benefited our safety effort, which in turn means they aren't going to pay claims. And that's really what they're in business to do, is collect premiums and not pay claims. So I expect to make that argument. I don't know. I'm a pretty good arguer. We'll see if I'm successful. It may take more than a year of results, but I think we're going to have a pretty strong argument to say our drivers are doing the right things and we have the safety scores to prove it. Second question Bobby asks, I understand that not all truck speeds should be turned up to a higher MPH, but would you be interested in doing a pilot program for those drivers with the lower percentile in the Smart Drive system score and for those who've been with the company for a decent amount of time? And if those people start to mess up with their safety score or get tickets, that their speed should be brought down as punishment. Would you at least be willing to look into that? At least for those who keep their score under, and he gives a couple of different examples. I think that it would probably be lower than these numbers, but the concept is sound. I would say yes, if first of all, the insurance company said they would reward us and make sure we had good coverage and better premiums. So I think it would be interesting to do a pilot project. I still don't think the time is right yet until we talk to them this fall. One of the other challenges, I think this could be overcome, is if we turn the speed up on certain drivers and then they have to come back down, that's not easy to do. You have to bring the truck in, you have to download it, or you have to reprogram it. And I would need to understand that because we don't need to have a bunch of time and expense going up and down on speed. But I think there's a reasonable idea here that we could pursue, provided insurance companies say that they would reward us and would not charge us a higher premium, and they would agree with us that Smart Drive is a good way to measure our drivers. Bobby finishes up with, I feel that most of us improving our safety scores would also help prove in a courtroom that the Smart Drive system has been a big benefit on improving your driver's safety mindset. I agree it'll prove that our drivers are doing a good job. When you go in a courtroom, I don't think we have any idea how well we could win or lose in that circumstance. So I'd be very cautious about that. He goes on to say, I feel that if lawyers and insurance companies would try to come at us for raising our speed, we could easily get that one kicked out of the courtroom in a jiffy. I really hope that's right. I think we're going to have to prove our case before we would take that chance, because we got the proof to show that Groendyke drivers are among the safest drivers on the road today. Thank you very respectfully, Bobby. Thanks for that note, Bobby, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. One thing that before we move on to some other points that I want to say is, if I believe something should be done a certain way, I do my research on it, and I'm going to tell you this is how I feel, or this is how we as a senior management team feel. And if I think there's an opportunity for us to do something that's in your best interest, that we can improve your driving experience or your work experience in this company, I am going to do that. But I'll always tell you what I think. I will tell you the truth. And if I'm not going to do it, I'll tell you I'm not going to do it, or we're not going to do it. I think that's important for you to know. You're professionals. I think you have a challenging job. And I think it's important for you to know how we're trying to manage things from up here in Enid, and for you to give us input on how things are for you out in the field. So, do we have any other questions that have come in, or can I go on to some of the other
You can
points?
go on, no questions.
Okay, no questions yet. So, one of the other things about raising the speed limit, and I'll get off of that, is trucks are set to go to run at their optimum at a certain speed. If we were going to raise that speed, then I think we would want to make sure we're speccing the rear ends and the gearing ratios to maximize that. If we raise the speed of the trucks, there's absolutely an economic cost to the company, and we can't look for any places to raise cost if there's not a payback to that. When I came to work at Groendyke, the drivers made about 22% of all the revenue. Today, drivers are making close to 30% of all the revenue. So in other words, the pie the drivers get has gotten bigger. Well, that had to come from some other part of the pie. So if we take away or we raise a cost in a certain area, we need to find another place that we can save that money. And we're not talking about let's quit doing maintenance, let's quit buying tires, let's quit buying the quality trucks we're buying. We have to make efficiency moves if we're going to make a move like raising the MPA or the miles per hour that could raise our operating cost. So some other things that we'd had questions about in the past. Is Groendyke currently working on a system in Geotab similar to the PeopleNet DriveWise that allows drivers to bypass way stations? Well, we're currently using BestPass. Before that, it's PrePass, but I guess it doesn't work in all areas. And for areas where BestPass doesn't work, we're working on a solution using DriveWise. And this solution, if things go the way that we're hoping, should be in place by the end of this month, by the end of July. So hopefully next meeting we can talk about that being possible. We've had questions about how are we doing in generating business from customers and how are we doing financially. Last time I talked about the ridiculousness of people saying we were going bankrupt. We've had pretty good success because of the market we're in, getting customers to pay more in rates. That's helped us because we've paid out, or we have put in place about $4.5 million worth of driver and non-driver employee pay increases. We continue to be financially stable. We're seeing we're actually making profit now. That's a good thing, because if you look at how much the companies like us shrunk in during the pandemic, it's nice to be able to make a little bit of money, and we still think be best in class in the bulk space. A lot of our costs have gone up. Probably most of you have seen costs in your own home economics go up. Certainly wages are going up. We've had 3 increases in cost in some of our maintenance supplies like oil and tires. So it's a tremendously unusual year to have that many price increases in one year. Trailers, we're speccing some trailers for some new business or to add into some business. And some of the quotes we got were over 30% more for the same trailer that we bought 1 to 2 years ago. I have a hard time seeing the trailer manufacturing costs have gone up that much, but the point is they're going to be able to get close to that. So one of the other areas of focus for us is to remain and probably in some ways to become a better cost leader. It's a great way to leverage our abilities as a company to grow, is to try and be a cost leader. That doesn't mean we have to be the cheapest. There are some really irrational competitors out there that make dumb moves. We'll talk about some of that here in just a second. But we want to provide tremendous value for what we charge to our shippers. And if we can be competitive with many other carriers, we'll be able to just take business away because of our reputation for safety and service. What you deliver as drivers and our employees deliver as an experience for customers. We want to provide safe, reliable service at a good value. That means we have to be lean, but still be strong, not be cutting costs too much. Capacity is tight in every market, so we have begun to prioritize customers. I talked about this a little bit last time. We call it segmentation, but just think of it as prioritization. We are assigning values to customers based on a whole host of things. So how do they treat drivers? How do they pay their bills? How often do they bid their business out? How much do they value safety? How much do they value service? So if they are not aligned with our vision, they're probably going to drop down on that prioritization list, which means they're not going to be as attractive to us. One of the primary ways that we do that is we assign a large amount of value to how do they treat drivers? What do they think of drivers? Do they do things that make the driver's life easier? Do they care about us making a profit? We think that the economy we're in now, most economists and industry experts say this is going to be this way for a couple of years, that we're going to be in a tight, constrained market from a capacity standpoint, and the economy is going to be strong and robust. So we think we've got an opportunity to do a good thing, grow the company a little bit, and hopefully make a profit. Operationally, we talked about the fact we raised pay, but I want to point out something that there are a lot of carriers that use gimmicks and gimmicky pay packages and incentives to try to lure drivers to supposedly greener pastures. Many small carriers did this with PPP money. We were too big to qualify for PPP. We looked at the list of who got it. A lot of companies that are small did that, and they were able to use that to offer one-time incentives on pay. I'm just going to tell you, we're not going to subject ourselves to being compared to other carriers that have these gimmicky incentives. We're not going to do things that are irrational and unsustainable just to get drivers to hopefully try to hang on to some revenue. We're looking at the long term. We want to have businesses sustainable that gives you good opportunity to make money and for us to make a return as a company for the long term. Look, we've been doing this for 89 years. We've seen these kinds of times come and go. We're still here. We're still in the top 10. So I think that is proof that we do a lot of things right. A little bit about smart drive safety in general. The two big issues we're still seeing with smart drive is cell phone use and following distance. Those are the biggest struggles we have with smart drive. Scores are coming down very slowly. I think the last I heard, Holly might be able to chime in. I think we were in the 35, 34, 33 range.
Low to mid 30s.
Low to mid 30s. And it's been pretty stable in that area. So we really still have to look at cell phone use. You guys know this. It's illegal for you to use your handset while you're driving, and following distance. So those are things to manage to get your smart drive score to continue to come down. We won the Kansas Motor Carriers Association's Grand Trophy for 2020. So great job for certainly the terminals in Kansas, but also any trucks that went through Kansas. Your miles counted towards that effort. So great job. Our safety team has been working on hazard risk assessments and journey management plans. Pretty complicated way of saying where are we having risks when we're on a load and when we're taking a load from point A to point B, how well do we plan that? So we want to have some tools that we can deploy to hopefully help you understand where the risks are on certain routes before you get on that route if you haven't been on it. So any questions come in yet, Holly?
Just to mention from Brad Clark that his smart drive score has been 0 for over a month, so it can happen.
You know, that calls for a Ricky Bobby moment. Woo! Good job. That's excellent. And I know we have some other drivers doing that too. So it's definitely proves the point that we've got the best drivers in the business.
We'd like to be 25 by the end of the year.
Okay, good goal. 25 is our goal to get to at the end of the year. So compare your score the next time you're talking to your manager. And I think by the end of the year, we're saying we think we can put those scores on the app so they'll know what their scores are.
Yes, we're
Am I
working
accurate?
towards that.
Okay.
Yes.
Here's some other kind of just lower priority news maybe that might be of interest to some people. We have disposed of a lot of older tractors and trailers this year, and older tractors really have a kind of a higher value right now than we're surprised. It's almost like used cars have gone up 30%. Older tractors have gone up too. We've actually disposed of about $3.4 million worth of older tractor and trailers. We're working on finalizing our tractor order for next year that would start delivering sometime in the first quarter, so the first 3 months. Usually by the time we get that in, it's sometime late January, early February. for 2022. We have some facilities that have some projects that have either been completed or are underway. Jacksonville's remodel began in June of this year. Kansas City, I think we're working on the driver's room. Maybe they came there today. My notes show that we started that expansion July 6th, and we should have those completed sometime in September if we don't find any other problems. In chemical planning, we're going to grow the red team a little bit. And one of the reasons we're able to do that is we have really high demand on chemical traffic. The Chemical Planning Center is able to book loads 2 to 4 weeks out in all markets. That's extraordinary. That just shows how tight capacity is. A little bit of a concern, and tight capacity creates this, but we should keep an eye on it. We've always prided ourselves on being able to have flex capacity for customers. So if a campaign came up, we could jump on it. Current demand just doesn't leave us very much flexibility to take on core customer campaigns. I will tell you, this is a big concern in the Southeast, where they are always concerned during hurricane season. Whenever people need to be evacuated, there's a real strong demand for fuel so people can get off the coast, get their families off the coast. All tank truck carriers are really tight right now and don't have extra capacity. And I've been on calls with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and they've asked, what do we do if we have a national disaster or a regional disaster like a hurricane, and we don't have tank truckers to help us haul water or get fuel in and out of an area? That is a concern at a national level. And I think the nice thing about that, if there is a silver lining, is it shows just how essential tank trucks and tank truck drivers are to the economy, to the way of life that we enjoy in the United States. So that's a concern. We're working on implementing something that's a novel idea to the tank truck industry, and that is daily load targets. And that is telling a customer, we're going to allocate a certain amount of resources to you based on what your business expectation is, and not have this high and low range that we're expected to handle. It's something that I don't know of any other tank truck carrier that's doing. I think that this is really very common in truckload carriers, so that when capacity is tight, they get a certain amount of our capacity, and if they want more than that and we have to take it away from someplace else, then that's going to cost that shipper to move trucks and drivers into an area to give them that flexible capacity that they need. That's something we're working on. I think it'll take a while for that to take hold with shippers. They've been used to asking for the world and giving a lane to a carrier and saying, this is your lane, whether there's nothing in there for weeks at a time or it's blowing and going, you're expected to handle it at a prescribed rate. That's just not very realistic. You don't buy airline tickets that way. Whenever someone needs extra capacity and they've not planned for it, their emergency shouldn't create an emergency on our part. They should pay for that. More on chemical planning centers. We're working on map graphics, which is software to use for planning and ops to maximize utility. When we talk about maximizing utility, why are we talking about that? We want to maximize the time that a driver is driving and little else other activity that is not paid for by the customer. So that should mean if we're maximizing utility driver, that improves the driver's earnings, keeps drivers loaded, and decreases downtime. So that's why we work on tools like that to hopefully get more efficient. In the refined planning centers, they've rolled out something called the Capacity Demand Forecaster, and terminal managers and driver managers can look at markets and projected sales to see if we're properly staffed by shift, so we can either combat sales spikes, which typically we see a run on stores maybe on Saturday morning, Friday nights. We want to make sure we have enough people to carry us through the weekend so we can start refilling on Monday. We've really suffered regionally in Colorado, somewhat in New Mexico and West Texas. Every year this time of year, we have a challenge with supply and allocation issues in those markets. It seems to be particularly acute this year. So it's really forcing us to work hard on making sure we have the right capacity and even looking at it shift by shift so we can use the capacity of the driver's hours that we have in a market and make sure we maximize that so we can keep our customers wet and full of fuel. Thank you. See if there's anything else. I think that hits all my notes that I was planning to bring up. Anything else come in on the chat?
Do you know what types of tractors we'll be looking at for 2022?
Pretty sure, unless there's a continued problem with chips, which we're still seeing, and I saw it by some manufacturers and cars, it's probably going to be a continuation of the Kenworth tractors. I'm really excited to get our hands on one of those new T680s. Looked pretty cool when I saw the videos of it. A lot of more LED lights on it, a lot more kind of wow stuff. But the others will probably be a continuation of the new Freightliner Cascadia. That's been a great package with their transmission and engine package. We've seen good response from drivers and some of our maintenance expenses with those trucks. So it'll probably be those two. I know that our maintenance staff is working on that now. And as I find out more, I'll be sure and pass that on. Don't know yet on trailers. There are 3 or 4 suppliers we generally deal with, and we're going to see there probably are some pricing issues there to see who's going to be competitive and really build the kind of trailer that we need for the future.
Any plans to lower deductible or copay options for the health insurance?
That's a good question, and I think that's something that we're looking at. I won't give you a lot of hope that we're going to lower it significantly. What we've done is put that money in the HSA contributions, and I think that's important. Continue to put the money into your HSA so you can use that. There might be some opportunity to lower that out-of-pocket deductible a little bit, but I wouldn't look for it to change dramatically. But it is something that I've asked our staff to look at, and I'll keep you apprised as we do some of that analysis.
We might like I might do a Facebook Live event just on insurance one
I think
day.
that would be a great one because it's such a complicated thing, and you know, I've heard people compare getting insurance to cafeteria food. You know, you don't like it, you got to have it. But we want to make sure that we're giving you not only something that's affordable, and keep in mind, we haven't raised our premiums much in the last 4 years, 5 years.
Right.
And before that, it was going up sometimes 8, 10, 12% a year. And it's been less than 10% for all those years together. I think it's more like 7%.
Yeah.
So we've done what we wanted to do. People say bend the cost curve. All they're talking about is trying to keep that cost from going up very fast. And we've done that. We also want to make sure if you have to use this insurance, that it's actually decent insurance. So there's a quality component and a cost component, and we're trying to balance those. And I tell you, as much time as I spend on our truck insurance, I spend equally as much time, and we have a large team of people that work on the health plan every year to make sure that we're hitting all those marks as closely as we can. So we know we have families. We're trying to do the same thing you're doing and manage those costs, but we want to make sure that what you have is a good product too.
That's
Other
it.
questions? Is that it?
That's it.
Well, thank you for tuning in for episode 2. Hopefully this is helpful to you and it will stimulate some more questions. If there are questions I think that are relevant to the group, then I'll bring them up at our next episode, which should be in about 1 month. So this is Greg Hodgen signing off from Let's Talk. Hope you really have the rest of your month is good and that you are safe and sound. Thank you and good night.